Which Puffco device should you get? Look, this is a very common question. I get asked this question indirectly and directly a lot through my Twitch stream, where if you don't follow me on Twitch, I go live every night at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can see all the devices I'm using, whatever I'm testing at the time. But I am constantly asked by people, which Puffco device should I get? And look, I get it. It's the biggest company. They have some of the best devices, some of the most marketed and most well-known devices. So I'm gonna break down from my perspective, because I've used everything that they make just about, with the exception of the Plus, but that's one of the more out-of-date items, and I don't know if anybody is considering that right now. But I should have an individual review for each of these on my website, but I'm just gonna talk about each one. I didn't think I was gonna make this video, but you know what? Here I am making this video. So first on the list, let's just start with like the lowest cost, right? I'll talk about when they came out and how good they are versus each other. But the lowest cost one is the newest device, is the Pivot, which is $130. It features no glass out of the box. It's basically just a pen, right? I'm gonna omit showing each of these devices to hopefully avoid getting flagged. But you guys know what these look like. These are the most marketed devices. If you don't, just go to their website. They're all right there. But the Pivot is their, I would say, most entry-level device and their most portable. It'll slip easy into your pocket. I've personally taken that with me on a few adventures, and it works out pretty well. I do have a Cewpins code over at like Boom, you know, Head Shop. But again, I'll put a link maybe breaking down each device. But the Pivot being their newest device makes a lot of people think it's the best, and it's honestly, it's really good. For the price that you're paying and the performance that you're getting, it is really good. I think my biggest issue, or some people's biggest issue, is that the battery life isn't as good as some of the other devices, but it's actually pretty good when you compare it to other brands and other devices that are the same or in the same category. It's actually very good, especially for the price. Now, the Pivot has a small chamber. A few of the devices just have a smaller chamber. I think the Proxy is pretty small. The new Peak is pretty small. And then the Pivot, it's got to be the smallest. But it can still handle like a decent amount. I think one people's issue is they're used to scooping big old globs. So when they get a device with a smaller chamber like that, they just start pulling reclaim through or unmelted wax. I've heard a few people complain, oh, my Pivot's filled with reclaim. And it's like, you're putting too much in there and you're sucking on it too hard. I don't know what to tell you. It's too big and you're sucking on it too hard. I would say if you don't have any devices, you're not sure if you want one, you're just trying to test the waters, that's probably the best one to get. The Pivot's probably the best entry level. If you're not looking for the biggest hits or the most accessories to go with it, Pivot is a great option. Now, next, I think we're going to go in price. The Pivot's the newest one. The second newest one is also the second cheapest one. It's the new Peak. Not the Pro, but the new Peak. And it's about $220. I think it comes in a few different colors. You don't have the big 3D XL chamber. You don't have the app connectivity. You don't have like the super cool RGB lights lighting up the glass. But you can do like 20 to 30 really good hits. Now, I like the Peak because if you get it and you want to upgrade to the Pro later, you can use the same glass if you end up getting a cool piece of glass, or if you just need a backup glass cone or whatever. The glass is interchangeable between the Peak and the Peak Pro. The atomizers aren't, but the glass is, which is cool. None of the devices have an interchangeable atomizer. They each have their own, which some people don't like, but I think it makes it a little bit easier. And some of the atomizers are just way cheaper than the other ones. Like the Peak Pro atomizer costs more than if you need to replace your Pivot atomizer. Now, I think if you're considering the Peak, you've decided you don't want to spend the extra couple hundo and get the Pro. You don't need the app connectivity. You don't need the larger chamber. You don't need the RGB lights. You just need a bunch of pretty solid hits. I think it's a really good option. I really liked mine. I tested out 3 different Peaks, and everybody that I let use one was very impressed with how it hit, because, you know, if they've already used the Pro, they're like, oh wow, it's almost as good, right? I'd say the Pro, now that it comes with the 3D XL, it's just that much better. When it didn't come with the 3D XL, the performance was kind of close. I think they just had no choice but to include the 3D XL, because otherwise you wouldn't want the Pro. But for $220, the new Peak is a really good option. It does more hits than the Pivot. It does maybe not as many as the Pro. It's hard to tell, right? Because you have like 4 temperature options, maybe like a 5th boosted mode on the new Peak. And with the Pro, you can customize the time and temperature a lot. You can do more with the hit, so you can kind of work on that battery efficiency efficiency by fine-tuning your hit to get more out of the battery. But I would say if you're doing like identical hits, you look up whatever the time and temperature for the Peak is, you plug that into your Pro, you're probably going to get more hits on the Pro. And it's probably going to do a better job with the hits because it has that larger 3D XL chamber. Just because it's the XL doesn't mean you have to put huge globbered De Niros in there. You can put a smaller dab, and it does a pretty good job. It's really efficient with the smaller hits. I would say probably consider the Peak unless you want the nicest device, unless you want the Pro. Probably consider the Peak. If you don't need super portability, if you don't need to be able to easily slip it in your pocket like the Pivot, if you're just trying to get good hits but you're not trying to spend PS5 money, the Peak is a really good option. Now let's talk about the third most expensive device, and this is technically the oldest device that I'm talking about. All the other ones have released or had an update after the Proxy came out, and the Proxy I believe is $269. I just looked on their website. It's a little bit more than the new Peak. It costs like twice as much as a Pivot. It's not twice as good. I hope this isn't controversial. I hope nobody gets mad at me because I really do like the Proxy, but right now it's like it's on the bottom of the totem pole for all their devices. It's the oldest one. I feel like this year they could drop a Pro. I was gonna wait and see, but if they don't drop one, I still wanted to have this video out. Maybe if they do drop a Pro version, I'll do an update on it. But right now, I think the Proxy is their worst device. And that doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean it's worse than other brands or whatever. It's still really good. But if you're just looking at this one company, you're looking at the devices you can get, you might want to wait to see if they update the Proxy this year. Now, where the Proxy shines is it comes with, you get that cool hand pipe, dry pipe feel. You feel like your grandpa telling a story when you're just hitting your concentrate. It gives you like a really comfortable, fun. Hitting the pipe, it adds a new level to it. I've hit a million pens. I'm never like, oh yeah, this is cool. But when you hit the pipe, you're like, what's up, dog? I'm ready to tell a story. I'm ready to solve a mystery. What's up? Where's Watson at? So the biggest benefit of the Proxy, I think, is all the cool glass that you can get. They made the sizes for the Proxy public, and they highly encourage glass blowers to make a lot of cool stuff for it. And I think that there's tons of stuff that I've seen out there. I'm like, dang, I would use my Proxy more if I had that. But I still like just the regular default glass that comes with the dry pipe hits. I will say though, like the amount of hits that you're gonna get and the level of hits is similar to the Pivot. I don't have an exact number of which one's gonna do more hits, but I think the battery life of the Pivot and the Proxy are pretty similar. Neither of them connect to the app. Neither of them have fancy RGBs. You got similar temperature settings on both of them. But I think they're both giving you a dry hit. I think that Pivot shines for the portability. And unless you specifically want the Proxy, you might not need to consider it at least until they drop an updated version. I think I mentioned this on my Twitch stream the other day. I've shelved my Proxies. I don't know if I'm using them until I have so many devices to test. I have so many things that I'm trying out. I don't know if I need any Proxy hits until like a new one comes out, but I still like it. It's still a very cool device, and I'm as soon as they drop the newest version of it, I'm getting it right away. Now, let's talk about the baddest, toughest dude in the gym, the Peak Pro. This is, I gotta say it, it's the best device for concentrate. There's other stuff like it. There's other stuff that can have a similar level of performance. Nothing is as good as the Peak Pro. That can change. That could easily change this year. There's plenty of companies that have new devices on the horizon. That could change tomorrow. But right now, the Peak Pro, hands down the best. It's not 1,000 times better than some of these other options, but it's better. It's the most expensive, yes. We're in PS5 money range. It's $420. It ain't cheap, but it's good. Now, with any of these types of devices, yes, it can break. Yes, the atomizers, you got to swap them out every now and then. There's a lot of baggage that comes with some of these devices, but it gives you some of the best hits that you can get, especially now that it includes the 3D XL. You get the big ol' rips. You can do huge globs if you want. The 3D XL will give you a huge hit like a slurper would. Most of these other ones, you're not able to get like a mondo hit, but you can do a pretty big one on the 3D XL. You might need to up the temperature a little bit, work out your settings here and there, but I've done hits bigger than you need to do, right? So it has the capabilities. Now, I will will say, if you don't need the biggest hits, if you don't need to have the option to do Mondo globs, it's still really good with the battery. Say you tune your settings down for smaller hits, you're gonna get more hits with the settings tuned down than you are on other devices. More than the new Peak, more than the Pivot, and definitely more than the Proxy. So if you're tuning your settings down to match what it would be on like a lesser device or a smaller device for smaller hits, you're just gonna extend the use of your battery. If you're running it cooler and a shorter time, I usually run like 480 to 5 for about a minute. I know some people are going to ask. All the other ones have presets. I use, I don't know, green or red or whatever. It doesn't matter. But usually on my Peak Pro, I'll do like 480 to 5, and I'll go for like 50 to 60 seconds. And sometimes I go a little bit longer or shorter. Sometimes I go a little bit higher or lower. It depends on the concentrate. Almost every time I open a new jar, I got to reconsider the settings. I'm like, is it doing the same job here with a different material? And a lot of the times, no. You got to tune the settings. That's what the profiles are good for. But if you got unlimited funds, you want the best of the best device, the Peak Pro, it's at the top of the list. It has been out for a little while. There could be a competitor, somebody else drops something, there's a new device or something that beats it, but right now it's at the top. It's the best. If I were to make a new tier list today, it would still be number one. So I hope that I broke down each one in a way that could help you understand which one you might want. I think most people, if you're looking for something entry level, the Pivot is a very good option. If you don't care about the portability, you want something that hits a little bit harder or a little bit more often, but you're not trying to spend the PS5 money and get the Pro, the new Peak is a pretty good option for around $220. And I hate to say it, but maybe just, if you're looking at a Proxy, maybe just hold off, and there could be a new one announced end of this year. Or I could eat my words and like they just never drop another one. I don't know. But I really think they're dropping a new Proxy. If not the end of this year, very soon after, I'm expecting one. And if not, what are you doing? Give me a new one. Either way, I'll have a link in the description breaking down each of the devices and where you might be able to get one. And come check me out on my Twitch stream. I go live every night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And look, we got new devices to test out. I said there could be a new king of the food chain, top of the e-rig list soon. So if you want to see it first, I will definitely use it on a Twitch stream before it ever appears in a video. Have a lit day, my dudes.